I used to hide behind trees, and I wanted to say that those moments waiting to hear and get the message that nobody was injured were very difficult, knowing that kids could have been hurt or killed, or my kids could have been killed. And those moments of waiting and getting that message that everybody's okay were long. We found ourselves hiding in the bathroom before we have a little shelter in the home. And I'll never forget, like at 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, we're all there, and I'm just standing. I haven't found a place where to bend down because it's small. Kibbutz, it's not like big bathrooms like in America. And we're there, and Ilani, my daughter, says, Eva, bend down, bend down. And those days, we thought that we were protected, but we weren't. So it all happened on the 7th, like everybody knows. And Keith and I ran to a little shelter, and we on Friday are so close to Gaza, we don't have time to close the door, and we don't have time to close the window. So we don't. We just hide behind the wall. And because so many times I used to tell Keith, come, 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 just leave the door, just leave the door. You don't have time. They used to fall on the way to the little shelter. And so many times we were even lucky to get there on time. And that day, we didn't close the door, we didn't close the window. And after 2 alarms, we went out of the shelter, and from our daughter's window, from the room just next to her, we could see all the rockets going to Israel from Gaza. And we knew that they are going to Tel Aviv because they're very high. And I want to say that on the kibbutz, you can hear the click before it leaves, and you can hear the whistle before it lands, and you don't know where it's going. So we were in a complete shock. I remember like having the kids and saying, what happened? We ran into our shelter, he closed the door, he closed the window, and we were sitting there. And after a very short while, we got a message from somebody from the kibbutz. What is the noise that we can hear? And then somebody wrote, those are terrorists killing people already. Very shortly after that, we got a message that Ophir Lichtenstein was murdered. I'll never forget that moment. It was a moment that I shaked. I hold kids' hands. We looked at each other, and I always say that we looked in the eyes of each other, but we looked inside our bodies. That's how we looked at each other. And I just didn't do the connection between terrorists and killing. So I was in a complete shock, and Keith was calm, and he was trying to calm me down, and trying to calm me down. And then we didn't know what's happening because we were disconnected from internet, and we wrote in the WhatsApp group of the family, can somebody tell us what's happening? There was no answer, no real answer. And then after some time, Jill, my daughter, wrote to us, Even Hapa, you're the strongest people in earth. And that sentence went straight into my heart, and I understood that something really bad is happening or could happen to us. And then Ilan, my daughter, wrote that we have to be in contact with her all the time because she's very worried. But nobody told us what's happening. And Dorit Kislev from Gaza, she was murdered very shortly after it started. She was always the one for years that used to say, you need to go in, you can go out, nothing happened. But she was murdered, so there was nobody that did what she used to do. So Keith and I are sitting there in the shelter, holding hands, looking in the eyes, through the body, and trying to figure out what's happening. And then I said to Keith, we need to lock the door, lock the window. And I want to say that the door inside is written locked in English. and the window was locked. So we thought that we were going to be okay. And after so and so, I can't remember exactly how much, but we started hearing the Arabic from outside. And our son that lives on Plaza wrote to us that he can hear the Arabic from outside, and he's holding his fingers. And we there, I'm worried about Shai, and we started to hear the Arabic and then shouting and screaming. And then they're walking inside the house, and we can hear the steps coming towards the door. And Kit and I are holding our hands and shaking. They opened the door, it made a noise, but it opened with a click. Keith immediately put his head on his knees and his hands on his head, and they would say our lives. I stood up in our sprint, and we were taken out of the house, out of the back window, in a very brutal way. They pulled Keith and I out. They tore my meniscus in my knee, and while we were going with the car keys of Keith's car, because they took us in Keith's car, they pushed us and they broke Keith's ribs. They shot us, and one of the bullets hit Keith, and we were taken in Keith's car to Gaza. We brought him to Gaza while Keith is bleeding, and I'm shaking, and Keith is saying that we need to run away because we're going to go to Gaza. And I looked at him and I said, how can we run away? Because we've got one terrorist with a knife in front of us, and the other with a gun. And I just said, Keith, we can't try and think about running away. We arrived to Gaza, and the people were just standing outside, clapping their hands, shooting in the air, shouting Allahu Akbar in Arabic, and happy, while we're shaking. And we were taken immediately underneath the ground, and I'm looking at Keith with the blood. He was pale, he was white, I was shaking, and I remember sitting and saying to myself, what are we doing in Gaza? That happened very quickly. We just didn't understand what we were doing in Gaza. So we there sitting, and then shortly after that, Daddy Billman from Gaza came down. He was full of blood, and he was injured on his head. They hit him, and he was like touching his head all the time. And I had to tell him, he asked me if it's okay, and I had to say that it's okay, even though it wasn't okay, but I didn't want him to get nervous. And then the Goldstein family came down, the mother with the three kids, and she couldn't sit. We were like in a little niche underneath the ground, and she was like walking 2 steps there, 2 steps back, saying, they killed my daughter. Yeah. They killed my husband. They killed my daughter. So they arrived after seeing their sister and their father, and she, the daughter, and her husband. And there were 7 of us sitting there, not understanding what we're doing there. And I always used to say that if somebody could see us, what we looked like, everybody had blood on them, and we were so frightened. And then the Hamas terrorists came and handcuffed Gandhi with a zip tie, and after a couple of hours he came to cut it off. And then he came with a cutter, and he cut it off with the part of Gandhi's hand. And Gandhi's strength, I was shocked, and what I remember more than anything else is the Hamas terrorists. That he did it. And that was a moment that I said to myself, I'm in Gaza, and I'm a terrorist. And they're dead people, and I need to prepare myself. I'm going to go through very, very hard moments. You want me to continue? I can continue.
First of all, I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for your prayers, for your actions, for everything that you have done since October the 7th to get Aviva, myself, and all of the other hostages that have been brought back home, and to ask you to please continue your prayers and your actions and reminding everybody that you know that there are still 2 hostages being held by Hamas in Gaza that must be brought back home. I also want to thank you for coming here tonight. It's very, very special to me to be here. Bethel Synagogue was a place that I spent a lot of time in as a child, and I celebrated my bar mitzvah here. And of course, my late mother and father were very, very that was very, very important to them, and they contributed a lot to the synagogue and to the community throughout the years. Maybe some of you don't know that my mom was the first woman president of Bethel, and she carried on all through the years, serving on committees and just being really, really involved with the growth and the prosperity and the thriving of Bethel. And she was a driving force behind things that went on here, the renovation, and many other things. So, very, very happy and moved to be here. I spent 484 days in captivity, 6 months of which I was alone, and some of the time locked up in a room by myself, some of the time living with terrorists. I was relocated 33 times, spending time in tunnels and in schools with hundreds, if not thousands, of Palestinian civilians, sleeping on the floor most of the time, on foam rubber mats or mattresses. I spent 2.5 weeks living on the landing of the stairwell in the school. I was only allowed to go to the toilet when it was dark, before sunrise and after sunset. Experienced starvation and dehydration and unimaginable lack of sanitation. I was not able to properly clean my body for 484 days. I spent time in captivity with Aviva and I were together until she was released. Then I remained with a woman hostage who we had spent time with. This woman had been kidnapped from Kras, our community, and she was held by herself for 3 weeks, and she was chained to a bed, and she was sexually assaulted during that time. And they brought her to us, and we continued to spend about a month together with her. So after Aviva was released, this woman and I spent 5 days together, and she was released. And then told Aviva and I that I would be released the day after Aviva was released. I was really, really dreading the thought that they would release me, and this woman, after what she'd gone through, would remain behind with the 3 terrorists. So I was relieved. I was relieved when Aviva was released, that she was getting out of this horrific situation, and hoping that I would actually be released, but worried that I would be released and the woman would stay behind. So when she was released on the 30th of November, I was once again relieved, and I was happy that she was going home. I remained alone after that for 2.5 weeks. And during that time, the ceasefire ended and the war resumed. And the bombing was scary and felt very, very, I mean, you could feel the bombing. You could not only hear it, but you could feel it. The house was shaking. And the terrorists became more cruel and violent. And one of them, I was told just to lie on the floor all the time. I was only allowed to go to the toilet when I needed to. I had asked permission to go to the toilet. Sometimes it would take a while until they said that I could go. And out of the blue, a terrorist came up and he was standing above me and he started to scream at me and he cursed me and he spat on me and he kicked me. And this happened day after day. After 2.5 weeks of being alone, I met Matan Andrus, who was a tank driver, who was seriously injured on October the 7th. I met Matan in the middle of December, and his burns and his injuries were still all open, they hadn't healed. And Matan and I were held together for 67 days, locked up in a dark room, experienced together abuse and violence, and just formed a very, very strong bond with each other, helping each other get through this horrific time. And I just want to say before I continue that all of the 4 hostages, released hostages, thank God, Baruch Hashem, Matan, Omri, and Gali Z were all released in the last release of hostages in the middle of October. After 67 days, the terrorists separated us, and I was moved to a new location. And that's where I met Omri, and we spent months together. And again, supporting each other and helping each other. And actually, and the same with Matan, really, really knew each other's families. I mean, we spoke a lot about our families and about how much we miss them and shared common interests. We really, really had, as I said before, a special bond, a special support. And after months with Omri, I was alone for 3.5 months, moved around and just spent time in places that are not fit for human beings to be in. Toilets that were flushed once a day, and maybe even not that often. And I think I mentioned the starvation. Yes, I did. And I think missing my family and being worried about my family and knowing how worried my family are about me was, and being totally disconnected, I think that was probably the hardest thing for me to deal with. I started to try to send messages to my family that I'm okay. I would close my eyes and I would picture in my imagination, and I would always start with my mom, who passed away 2 months before I was released. And I would see my mom in my imagination. And I would talk to her. And I would tell her, I would say to her that I hope she's doing okay. And that I'm doing okay. But she shouldn't worry, and we will see each other hopefully very soon. And I would do the same with Aviva and my 4 children and my 5 grandchildren and my siblings, Lee, who was here with us today, and my sister Lucy and my brother David. And I would talk to all of them, and I was just hoping that some way, somehow, they would receive this message or feel that I'm alive. I was sure that my family's suffering was much greater than mine. I know it's hard to compare suffering, but that's what I felt. I felt if they only knew how I was doing, they would have some, hopefully, relief. Hamas did a propaganda video, Omri and I, and so I was really thinking that this is an incredible opportunity, that maybe my family will see me, and this is an opportunity to show them how strong I am, how I'm okay, I'm just even alive. And then we were told what to say in this video. Amongst other things, we were told to say that we have very happy memories of spending time with our families during the holidays. And this was around Passover, around Pesach. So I was thinking I must convey to my family that I am okay, both physically and mentally. And that's what I was trying to do. Telling them that I'm okay, that they shouldn't worry, saying that I hope they're okay. And then when I started to talk about and think about memories of being with my family during the holidays, they told us to say, I started to feel like I'm about to cry. So I did this to the cameraman that was in front of me, hoping that he would stop videoing me, hoping that my family wouldn't see me crying and not feel that maybe I'm like that most of the time, maybe all of the time. And then I bent over and I put my head on my knees, and I cried, and then I got myself together and sat back up. And then Omri and I saw ourselves in this video. And I had told Omri after I felt like I had failed my mission of conveying strength, that I'm okay to my family, that I was hoping would see this. And I told Omri, I feel terrible. I feel terrible. Family will see me like this. And Omri comforted me and he said, I think you really did something. I mean, the fact that you cried was only a natural thing to do. He actually thought it was something that my family would see as a normal or something to be expected. So I just want to say that Omri really was very supportive, and that's just one example of how he was. And then Omri and I saw ourselves on the video, on the television, and I was just seeing myself crying. I wasn't sure what they were going to show me. And once again, Omri supported me and he said, it's okay, don't worry. I'm sure your family will feel like you're okay even though you're crying. And then the day after that, we saw our families in Austin Square, stage. He was there, Aviva, 2 daughters, Lee's wife, Shali, and their 3 sons, Yilmatan and Itai, and Omri's father and his wife. And it was just an incredible and very rare opportunity to see our families and to know that at least they're able to do what they were doing. How are we doing time-wise?
Great.
I lose my sense of time, so. Okay, so I'll wrap it up by saying that After being 3.5 months alone, I met Ziv Berman from our community of Gaza. I've known Ziv since he was born. Aviva talked about his brother Gali that we spent time with in the tunnel in the first few days. And we spent a month and a half together. It was amazing to see Ziv after 3.5 months of being alone, and I was sure Hamas had decided I would be alone and all the hostages would be alone until the end. And then we moved to a new location, and they told us we would be together in the next location, and that did not happen. We were separated. I spent the last 2 months alone, and not knowing what was going on, not knowing that there was an agreement that had been signed. In the middle of January, I was moved, and conditions became, well, they locked me up in a room, which they hadn't done for a while, wondering why. And they started covering their faces, which they hadn't done in a while. I was wondering why, having no idea what was going on. 2 days before I was released on Thursday, the 30th of January, they opened the door of the room that I was locked in, and they told me to come out, and one of them said that I will be released on Saturday, wondering whether this was actually true or not. And then Saturday came, and they woke me up, and they told me to get undressed. I took off my pants and my shirt, and I was standing in front of the terrorist in my underwear. He told me, take off your underwear. Standing in front of him naked, humiliated, and feeling, I don't know what he's going to do to me. I had witnessed and experienced violence and abuse of many different kinds. And then he told me to get dressed, and then they took me out of the apartment. And I was moved around from vehicle to vehicle, around 5. And on the way to the location that I was released at, they were videoing me, every single car, and telling me to say something to Hamas. The first car that I was in, when the man was videoing me, said, say something to Hamas. While he was videoing me, I told him, I'm not sure what to say. So he said, maybe you want to thank Hamas because they took care of you, they saved your life, and they protected you, and they gave you food. So that's what I did. At least 5 cars that I was moved from one to another, videoed in. I said, thank you to Hamas. And then I was told that I would be taken up on stage. And when I was taken up on stage, I should wave to the crowd. And I should say thank you to the crowd. And I was brought into a vehicle full of armed, uniformed, head-covered terrorists and taken to the stage. And then they brought me up on stage. And I waved. And I was feeling like maybe something would go wrong and they would decide not to release me till the very last moment. I was taken off the stage into the Red Cross vehicle and driven to where we met the IDF. A psychologist and a doctor came and sat me down and asked me if I was okay. And there was a camera right in front of me, like this camera right here. And they told me, the doctor and the psychologist, that my family are watching me. So I waved to them, the thumbs up, and it was a moment of, I don't know how to describe it, but, and then I was taken to the army base and I was told to have a shower if I want to. And I mentioned 1,484 days of never feeling clean. So I actually scrubbed my body 3 times. Aviva and Shai, our son, were waiting outside of the room, and there was a doctor that had brought me into the room, and he said he'll be waiting outside if I need anything to call him. Came into the room like 3 times to ask me if I'm okay, because I was scrubbing my body over and over again, just to be clean when I meet Aviva and Shai. So I finished showering ritual and got out, met Aviva and Shai, and once again, I find it hard to describe in words what I felt, but it was immense joy and relief and gratitude. And it's very important for me to end by saying that my Jewish faith gave me a lot of strength in Gaza. I started to pray and I started to bless. These were things that I hadn't done on a regular basis ever in my life. I felt like the connection to our people, to the Jewish people, gave me a lot of strength. I was very inspired by everything, all of the atrocities and catastrophes, Khurban Bayit, the Holocaust, wars, terror attacks. I was thinking a lot about everything that we have, as a people, gone through, as a people have survived, and even thrived, was very inspiring. And I felt like the situation that I was in was not as bad as many other people, our people, and people in general in the world have experienced. So that also gave me a lot of strength. After I was clean and met Aviva and Shai, we were taken to an IDF helicopter. We got on, and we put on headsets. I mean, it's loud, so you have to have something in your ears, and you can't talk. But they gave me like a little board to write on, and I wrote on the board, Ima Shali, with a question mark, my mom. And I showed it to Aviva, and I knew immediately by the expression on Aviva's face that my mom was no longer with us physically. And I spoke at the unveiling a lot about what an amazing and inspiring woman my mom was, and how much I learned from her, and how much her values are with me, and her presence is with me, and I'm trying to do the best that I can to live my life and do in life, and do for this world good, and hopefully I'll be able to succeed in doing those things. I'm trying, but my mom and my dad were people that made this world a much, much better place. They did a whole lot of good for so many people from all ways of life in the world and in their community. I just want to end by saying that I feel blessed to have been my mom and my dad's son, and to be a part of the Siegel family. My brother Lee, and my brother David, my sister Lucy, and the entire family. And we had a very, very special day today, sharing our feelings and sharing Okay. Thank you.
I'm gonna let him ask questions because I don't think that he will ever end. Normally we talk about what happened in Gaza, and he lets me talk a little bit. I let him talk a little bit.
Oh, I had talked. I thought I talked about what happening. Maybe I was dreaming.
Okay.
I'm filled with questions, filled with gratitude, and awe. And so many people here are. I want to ask you. Your mom was a source of love, and
A source of?
love and positivity. And the truth is, you have a lot of reasons to hate. And I don't think you do. And I want to know where that strength comes from and what advice you have for the people here, right? Who are living after, and this is for both of you, however you want to do this, but who are living with a lot of just pain, everything that's unfolding.
I do not feel hate. I do not feel hate. I feel like what Hamas did is something I can't understand. I can't comprehend how people can behave that way, what they did. In captivity, I was as nice and grateful to them, which I always try to be. And interesting, I was kind of thinking in terms of if I am quote unquote nice to them, they will be nice to me. And that was kind of my strategy. But somebody mentioned that, and I really connected to that maybe in a way I was trying to teach them to be humane by showing them that I don't hate them. And I don't, I want to connect with them and I want to engage with them. I'm empathetic, trying to show empathy and trying to create a human connection with them. And I was also trying to learn as much Arabic as I could. Everything went on in Arabic and I felt like that would help. Well, it was necessary in order to engage with them. And I actually remember talking with one of them. I actually initiated a conversation with one of them, saying to him that this is the first time that I have ever met a member of Hamas. And this is the first time that he has ever met an Israeli, because they were youngish, and they had not, their age, these were not people that had worked in Israel. Some of their fathers had, because at the time, workers would come in, but none of them had ever been in Israel. And I said to him, I'm wondering, you and I are living together, and we've been living together for weeks, and we lived together for 3.5 months, this guy and I. And I'm just thinking and wondering, in saying, you do not behave in a way that is presented to the media that I am exposed to. And I'm wondering whether you share that feeling. I don't behave in a way that you are brought up or educated or been told that Israelis behave, or I'm not sure if I'm explaining this well, but and I was just trying to my small part to try to convince these people that Israelis are not what they think they are, and hoping that that might work and that might eventually or ideally create that they would tell their families that they met an Israeli and it was like this and like this, and anyway, trying to do what I can do for coexistence, for just
Because we want to add anything?
I feel like I haven't started. Well, I want to take you back to Gaza. And now connect to some of the things that Keith said. So, Gaza was very, very difficult for me, but I had Keith with me. I was very, very lucky that I had Keith, because coming home, I understood that they separated between couples. And so I really, really was lucky because I had Keith with me. And one of the days, Keith looked at me and Lily and Agam and Amit that we grew together with. And he said, okay, everybody needs to say something good that happened today. And I looked at Keith and I said, how can I say something good that happened? Nothing good happened today. And I just waited for them to say something good that happened. I can't exactly remember what Keith said, but I think maybe he said, thank you that we had rice to eat or something like that. And I looked at them.
We're alive.
That we are alive. He said that he thanks that he's still alive and that we are alive. And I used to say every day from that day that we used to do it, the same thing. Thank you for being with me and for helping me, and that I'm lucky that I have you to be with me. And I used to say that to Keith and to Lily, Agam, and Amit. We became like one family. We knew so many things about each other. So many times we were locked in a small room, and those were the times that were the most happiest moments, because we could talk. Nobody told us to keep quiet. It was very scary because we didn't know when they will open the door. But we were left there and then we could talk, and we shared lots of stories about our families. I remember Keith, like you saw, was talking and talking and talking and talking and talking and talking. Then he looks at me and he says, you want to tell me about Shitora? And I looked at him and I said, okay, I'll tell you about Shitora. Shitora's in North Carolina. We love Shitora. And so he got tired of talking, and that's what used to happen to us sometimes. We used to get tired of talking because we were tired and exhausted all the time. But we did know so many things about each family, and I just remember myself feeling that we couldn't have chosen anybody better to be with those three girls because they were amazing, and it was amazing with them that I loved. The bombs used to fall very, very close to us, and one of the times the cupboard that wasn't connected to the window, or door cupboard fell, went flying on us from one of the explosions outside. And that's how close we were to the bombs. We had the bombs all the time around us all the time. And we not if that wasn't enough, then we had the rockets going from Gaza all the way from the buildings that we were in towards Israel. And at the beginning, the first time that it happened, the building started shaking, and it was like the feeling that it's going to fall on top of our head, we're going to die. And the Hamas terrorists that was with us said, don't worry, it's us shooting to kill in Israel. And it was difficult to hear that. We even got to one of the houses that the Hamas had his wife and 3 children, and he was standing next to his child that was 3.5, and his child that was 2, and these rockets were going from the house that we were in while I was shaking, and he was clapping his hands and bent down to his 2 little ones and said, beautiful, beautiful. So he was teaching his 2 kids to kill at that age. The terrorists that were with us, some of them were terrorists that some of their families were killed like 15 years ago when they were kids. They hated us. They hated us. They treated us like we weren't human beings at all. They were just so mean to us. And the worst minutes for me and moments was to see them torture kids and torture the girls. One of the days, after 20 hours at least, we hadn't gotten anything to eat. So I looked at Amit and I said, please, just ask me, when are we going to get some food? He looked at the Hamas terrorists and asked, when food? He looked at us without blinking and he said, it takes a long time to make food. I'll never forget his face. After 4 hours after that, 24 hours, all we got was a piece of pita that was dry, it was old. I looked at the pita, I took a couple of bites, and I said, I'm going to hide this is the pita the next time it happens. Because I could see that Keith was losing weight and was very worried about him. And from that day, the half of pita that I got, I used to half it and put it in tissue and hide it. And then one day, the girl that was with us, Amit, she looked at the pita and she said, I'm going to throw them away because they're going bad. And I looked at her and I said, no, don't throw them away, they're for Keith. Even if they'll be bad, Keith or us will have to eat them. And I remember Keith looking at me and saying, I believe you eat the pita because you're losing weight too. I couldn't see myself. I couldn't feel myself that I was sick. And I didn't let it throw it away. One of the times we were given dates. I took one date, did it. The day after, the Hamas terrorists came in and they picked the thin mattresses up to sleep underneath and they threw my date away. I started crying. I used to hide myself crying by putting my hand on my head, that they won't see that I'm crying because we weren't allowed to. We weren't allowed to show them that we're sad, we weren't allowed to cry, we weren't allowed to laugh, we weren't allowed to stand, we weren't allowed to move. One of the days, one of the girls went to the bathroom and didn't come back. And I remember like saying to myself, where is she? Why isn't she coming back? And I said, maybe we should go and see where she is. And luckily, we didn't do it. And then after a while, she came in and she was shaking. And I got up and I gave her a hug. And while I'm hugging her, the Hamas terrorist came in and he started screaming, as if he's going to kill us. I looked at him and I said, don't worry, I love her. I didn't know what happened at that time, but I did know that something happened. And I did know that I wasn't allowed to hug. And I didn't know that I had to, as a human being, get up and give her a hug. And only after a couple of hours, knowing that something really bad had happened, she told us that the Hamas terrorists touched her. And I was just so proud of her because she continued to smile as if nothing happened. She showed him that she's okay. And that's not normal. I wanted to scream for her. And one of the days, the Hamas terrorist called one of the girls out. And then he brought her back. And he told her to get dressed. We used to get dressed while they moved us, looking like Arabs. And while she was bending down to pick up the hijab to wear it, she turned around and she looked at us. She was nearly starting to cry. And she said, I'm scared. They're going to take me and I'm going to be alone. And when she did that, he took her hair, he threw her on the floor, and pointed the gun in front of her face and said, one more word, I'm going to kill you. She got up, they took her to the next room, and they beat her. And they beat her, and they called Keith to come and tell her that she needs to say the truth, that she's lying. She didn't lie, and Keith tried to help. And whenever I tell that story, I wanted to scream. Keith wanted to scream. But we couldn't. We had to shut ourselves down. So they didn't really let us be normal people because it was taken away. One of the nights while I'm lying down, I took my foot out because I was too hot to cool myself. And the Hamas terrorist came and started screaming at me as if he's going to kill me. That I'm not allowed to take my foot out of the blanket. And I'm lying there thinking to myself, I behaved, he behaves, he behaves, Lily behaves, Akam behaves. We do everything we told. I wasn't allowed to take my foot out. And that's the amount of control that they had on us. If they didn't want to bring us anything to eat, they didn't. If they wanted to eat in front of us and smile while they're chewing, that's okay. If they don't want to bring us water, that's okay too. So one of the days, he took the bottle of water and showed the Hamas terrorists. After asking for water the whole day, then it's empty. And he looks at us and he does this. And if what do we want? And he goes and sit down. And I'm like doing that, not with my head. I just can't believe it. This terrorist is maybe 25 years old. We're older people, we haven't had water for the whole day. And he's drinking and he's chewing and eating in front of us the whole day. And then after 15 minutes, he takes the bottle, pours the bottle of water, because it's water in the tap. And he brings the bottle and he throws it at us. And all the time I used to ask myself, why? Why? Why do they treat Keith that's 64 years old like that? Why? We'll never, ever be able to understand that. One more story. That's one of the worst. That was the worst moment that Keith and I had in Gaza. We were taken underneath the ground. We were walking and walking, hardly seeing where to put our next step. And we come to this little niche, and we knew and understood that that's our new home. So Keith, Amit, and I, in a little niche on 3 mattresses on the floor, 3 mattresses. He told me that I have to say that they're mattresses, they're not the mattresses that we have these days. And we are there sitting, and I remember like looking at each, we were looking at each other, and we said we can talk because nobody's going to not let us talk. So we felt a little bit lucky. And there were 2 terrorists that were sitting outside the niche and talking in Arabic. And I was saying, oh, I just wish that they would just be quiet, let us talk a little bit. And then suddenly, silence. I looked at Keith and Amit, and I said, no, I can't believe it. You didn't have left us here alone. So I can't remember Keith or Amit got up and went to look and see if they're there. There was nobody there. We were left underneath the ground with a lamp that hardly works and a head torch that could not work underneath the ground 40 meters. I was in a complete and utterly shock. We were left with hardly any water and no food, a couple of days. And then after they came the next morning, after many hours, and brought us some water and some food. And we there trying to figure out when are they going to come again, because they come and go. And for many, many hours, they don't come. And then Keith sits down and he looks at me and he says, Aviva, I feel like I can't breathe. And I look at Keith and I say, just lie down and try and breathe. And I can see Keith that he's, but I was the same. So I knew what he was feeling. There was no oxygen for us, no air for us to breathe. And while we're lying down, the Hamas terrorists come down. And I'm like trying to say to myself, okay, maybe we're going to get out this time. And Amit didn't even sit up. And she was like leaning on her hands and begging. I don't see these old people there. Look at them. We can't breathe. They can't breathe. They're going to die. And he looks at us and says, very, very bad. No oxygen. No house. Leaves. So we're there. And we can't breathe. And at that stage, I said to myself, don't look at him. Don't look at his chest because he's going to die. I'm going to die. I didn't want to see him dead. And I'm trying to say to myself, okay, I'm going to die. I'm going to separate from my family. I'm going to separate from Keith. And I found myself just saying, please let me die. Because I don't want to see. I don't want to see Keith dead. And trying to figure out what is it going to feel like. What am I going to feel like? And what am I going to feel like if I keep dying? So Keith and I touched him in the ground. I'll never forget the first moment we were taken out and we were looking at each other, the 3 of us, and saying, we're going to live, and breathing. Until today, when there's fresh air, it always hits me. And I try and take as much as I can into my body. So we're really lucky that we're young. We're lucky to be alive. And we didn't say anything about kibbutz Gaza. So before you ask, I'll just say that kibbutz Gaza lost 64 people. It hit 40 families. 40 families lost 1 million.
I'll mention that on our website, we have a place where people can give donations to support your family and to support Gaza. And so I do hope that those who are gathered here will contribute. As we walked in, you mentioned Keith, you had your bar mitzvah. It was like in front of these gates, but it was over there. You face it when the ark faced that direction. And there are some kids who are here who grew up in Bethel, and they're here either still in high school or like my own son back in college, and they had their B'nai Mitzvah here. It takes incredible strength for you to share your stories over and over and over again. And I think I sort of have two questions that maybe are one, why do you do this? Right? Why is it important for you to share your stories? And what do you want those kids who are growing up in a time when the very idea of the state of Israel, and we're not entering into politica, okay? We talked about this before, but growing up with the very idea of the state of Israel under assault, and really not clear. What do they need to know from you?
I started thinking all of this. I'm thinking the fact that this does not come natural to me is pretty obvious. This was nothing I ever did before October the 7th. I never thought I would do it. Speaking in front of audiences, just the thought of doing it was something that would have caused me immense anxiety and fear and embarrassment and many other emotions that are hard to deal with. So I avoided it whenever I could. It was clear to me when I was released and when I got back home and I came to realize that I had been released, but 4 of my friends, and I spoke about them, and many other hostages remained in Gaza. I was shocked. I was sure after 484 days that this horrific tragedy was coming to an end and all of the hostages would be released. I felt terrible. I felt terrible that I was released and they all stayed back there, and I think I was very inspired by everything that Aviva had done, advocating to get me back. And Aviva and Shir and my family and Lee and my family in general and many, many others, not only hostage families, but people that just did whatever they could, and they did a whole lot, all of you as well. So I decided my mission was going to be, I would do whatever I could do to help get them back. And I'm grateful, and I feel the great privilege to have been given opportunities, a lot by the Hostage Family Forum, both in Israel and in the US, to advocate, to speak to audiences, to meet with governmental officials and Jewish communities and Christian communities. Very important for me to mention them, that there are a lot of Christians. It's not only a Jewish thing that have been involved and in supporting and advocating for the release of hostages. So, as we have said, there are still 2 hostages being held in Gaza, and I'm here to remind everybody that that is the case, and I've spoken about that before, and you, Rabbi Graber, also spoke about it. But I also want to try to speak about the strength that I found in this horrible situation that I was in, that I never would have imagined that I would have had the strength to cope with it. I want to tell all of you that that you are loved. Many people love you and they care about you, your family and your dear friends. And if you are ever in need, you should know that people will help you. And I had a very, very powerful experience of that, being the situation that I was in and coming back to realize that not only my family had done so much to get me back home, but many, many other people that don't even know me personally, but they heard about me, read about me, and they decided to do whatever you could do to bring me home. So that's also something that's important for me to talk about, is the strength, the resilience that I was blessed with, but I think it's the way I was raised, my mom and my father. And also I spoke about the Jewish faith, gave me a lot of strength and gratitude. I practiced a lot of gratitude, and Aviva mentioned what I had offered for everybody to say something good that had happened that day. And I think just the fact that I was alive, the fact that my body was in one piece, any day that went by that I wasn't kicked, spat on, or having guns pointed at me and threatened to be killed, these were all things that I experienced, and I witnessed other hostages being beaten and abused in many different ways, and Aviva spoke about that. So any day that passed when none of that happened, it was a day that I had a lot to say thank you for, to be grateful for.
Yeah.
I want to just remind that yesterday when I asked to talk here, I said, okay, so if 10 or 20 people will come, I'll come and talk. So I am tonight doing it for 2 reasons. Just look at you. There's so many people there. We talked yesterday. And just look how many who's going to be with us and together. And I feel it. I feel the love, the togetherness. And I want everybody to know the story. Everybody in the world, even if they're not Jews. Because those kids that you're talking about, the kids that you're talking about, I feel that I'm doing it for them. I'm doing it for the next generation, and the next generation, and the next generation, for our grandchildren, because we just can't keep it for ourselves. I come from a family of my grandmother that nearly most of the family were buried alive in Poland. And she kept quiet. I only heard the stories after she died. So I promised myself that I'm not going to stop talking. So that's the first reason. And then the second reason is we have somebody in the crowd that is very special to me and Keith. And I want to thank you. I want to thank you for everything that he did for us. He stood every Shabbat with a group of people at the at the hostage square and spoke. And Abdallah stood in the rain, got wet. He stood when it was 40 degrees and was sweating. He did that. Okay, and for me. And that's Lee. So that's another reason that I wanted to come here to thank him. And to thank all of you for everything that you've been doing and done. But I want to thank you for being Jews. for being on the good side, with good hearts, that want good. I was thinking just a while ago, we sit down as Jews around the table and we talk about what more can we do for each other to make ourselves happy and smile. We just want good for our kids, for our neighbors, for anybody. And then I was thinking, and Hamas terrorists sit next to the table. What do they talk about? Getting hate, nothing good. So we should be proud of ourselves always on being on the good side. With hearts that feel that one we even have and maybe to be killed for. We'll always do it without even thinking twice. And we'll always stay like that. And we'll teach our children and our grandchildren, and they will teach their grandchildren always to be on the good side of life. And that's why I'm going to talk wherever they lead me.
I just want to say that if by chance there's anybody here that didn't hear me thank all of you personally, to say it once again. And that is also one of the reasons that I talk, is to thank people. And I dream, it's a big mission, but if I could only thank every single person personally for what all of you did, what everybody did for me, that's an extraordinary opportunity for me.
Lee, do you want to say a couple words? This is your story too.
Before Lee starts talking, it's going to be very short, I promise you. I just want to thank Keith for staying alive and for coming back. I want to ask Lee to tell you what it's like being from the family.
Okay, our family, males in particular, come from a long line of criers. Not the kind that go out and announce in the public square. Ones at the waterworks. It opened up pretty easily. It's very emotional. You imagine most of you knew Keith and Aviva through the media. Now you have heard two genuine heroes. Genuine. Our mother was a hometown hero of Chapel Hill. These are two heroes that survived Gaza and continue to seek out. Our family is really built on Jewish values and values that honor life and respect for all human beings the world over. The weakest, the even weaker, the poor, even poorer. It doesn't matter where they were born because they didn't choose to be born where they were born. And it's our response. We've been brought up, and Aviva as well. The other is as important as we are. Without worrying and working towards the better for the other, we cannot be better. The world is a very, very hard, cold, difficult, multi-agended experience, even more so day by day. And speaking to the high school students, It doesn't help to remain silent. You don't have to argue. You don't have to be physical, but you speak. As Aviva said, on the right side. And there may be versions of the right side, but for our family in particular, through public health, through community leadership, the right side was to work anywhere and everywhere better. Because until everyone doesn't reach better, we are not better. And I think that's Judaism. I think social justice is Judaism. The diaspora has an incredible, incredible role to play in the future of Judaism in the world, but in Israel in particular. I personally ask everyone, we would hear it from our parents, you don't stay silent. You stand up and you're counted. You stand up, you speak for those that don't have a voice. And for 51 days, I was speaking for Keith and Aviva and the other hostages, and for another 433 days, we were speaking for Keith and all the other hostages. When Keith was released, as he said, I don't know if it was clear, but there were the 4 hostages, living hostages, that he was with over time. And we were speaking for them along with the other 16 living hostages. And we continue to speak for the hostages who are deceased and deserve a proper burial. One in Thailand, one in Israel. We continue to say and we continue to say it, but it's not just words. We try to talk the talk and walk the walk. These 2 people walk the walk for a marathon. They're iron people. And it's in our DNA. There's nurture or
Nature and nurture.
nature and nurture. We have both. And you young people in the audience, don't ever be embarrassed to speak out. What you have to say is as important as the people behind you, in front of you, to the right of you, to the left of you. We call it your moral compass. It's based in Judaism. I truly believe that. I'm not a religious person. But yes, Havdalah, every Motzei Shabbat, Tel Aviv, at the Hostage Square, was a religious, spiritual experience for me. I'm talking too much. But we're doing it at a board. We're doing it for the future. Kol HaKavod. Hope everyone understands those 2 words. All respect, all strength to you. And we've also learned that without our health, spiritual and physically, emotionally, mentally, we can't walk the journey. So please, everyone, look after yourselves. Thank you.
We are going to wrap up in a moment. I want to, first of all, invite everybody for pancakes tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock here in the social hall. And I think I want to say the pancakes are about choosing life and choosing sweetness. And it is that life and sweetness and light for which we struggle so dearly. I want to, in a moment, invite the community. We'll stand. I want to say a Mishabera for Keith and Aviva's continued healing, for the return of the hostages. And then I'm going to invite us, since tonight, as you said, Lee, you stood so many Saturday nights, it's Havdalah. We're not going to make a full Havdalah, but I'll invite us to sing Eliyahu Hanavi together, a hope and a prayer for better days and for a future that can shine. So please rise. And Lee, yeah, you guys come on up here. Come on. Lee, come on up too. Put your arms around each other, okay? We are so grateful. We feel I was installed as the rabbi, and I still have this beautiful picture of Gladys holding the Havdalah candle at the Havdalah on Saturday night, and we feel her presence blessing us and rejoicing with us, and how we have waited for this day. So Keith and Aviva, we pray for you, Mishaberach, Avotenu Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Yimutenu, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, we pray that the one who blessed all of our ancestors, all those who came before us, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, Leah, our spiritual ancestors, who Yivarech, Virapeh, that he grant blessing and continued healing of soul and healing of spirit and healing of body to Keith, Ben, Tova, Ruth, Aviva, Bat. What's your mom's name? Juliet. ויחזיר את כל החטופים הביתה ויביא שלום, שלום בליבנו, שלום לעם ישראל, למדינת ישראל, שלום לעולם, לכל יושבי תבל, ונאמר אמן. אליהו הנביא, אליהו התשבי, אליהו, אליהו, אליהו הקהילתי, במהרה בימינו יבוא אלינו, עם משיח בן דוד, עם משיח בן דוד, אליהו הנביא, אליהו התשבי, אליהו, אליהו, אליהו הקהילתי, במהרה בימינו יבוא אלינו, עם משיח בן דוד, עם משיח בן דוד. And please join me. כל עוד בלב פנימה, נפש יהודי הומייה, ולפתן מזרח קדימה, עין לציון זופייה, עוד לא הגעתי קראתנו, אך תקווה בת שנות 2000, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון ירושלים.
Liotam Tochi Be'artzenu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim. Teichem LaShalom. Thank you for coming tonight. Laila Tov.